Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting this March 22nd, both online and here in person at Balls Falls Center for Conservation. Kind of a good news, bad news day with here. This will be the last time we have a board meeting at the Balls Falls Center for Conservation. We'll be in the new facility when it comes to our April timeframe. Call to order. So I'm going to ask, Chandra, would you like to do the roll call, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Chair Foster, Member Beatty, Member Clark, Member Cridlin,
Here.
Member Grant, Member Hewson,
Present.
Vice Chair Metcalf, Member O'Neill,
Present.
Member Seaborn,
Present.
Member Patterson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to do the acknowledgement this morning. The Niagara Peninsula watershed is situated within the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, the watershed is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Through the 2021-2031 strategic plan, we reconfirm our commitment to shared stewardship of natural resources and deep appreciation of Indigenous culture and history in the watershed. You have the agenda. So are there any changes or modifications to the agenda this morning? Oh, yeah. There will be a deferral of an item with regards to the minutes of the full authority meeting. Unfortunately, those did not get sent out. Yeah, that's the closed session that's dated February the 16th. Unfortunately, our staff member was ill this week, so that did not get out. So that one is going to be deferred to our next meeting. So, with that, Member Beatty, can I get you to move that we accept the agenda? And Member Metcalf, would you please second that? Any questions to the motion? If not, please specify yes or no, or raise your hands, I guess. I have to turn around and look at the Zoom meeting. Yep, there we go. We have 3 of us here, and everybody else is at home today, so it's great. Any declarations of conflict of interest this morning? Hearing none. Approval of the minutes. So can I get Member Hewson to move that we accept the minutes of the full authority meeting dated February the 16th, 2024? And Member Seaborn? Yep. And Member Seaborn, could you second that, please?
I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or any corrections to the minutes?
Chair?
Yes.
Yes, there was one amendment just around the notes on the foundation. The proceeds were not going to be coming from the trivia event, so that's been, I think, noted through the administration. Thank you.
Okay. So the notes will be modified accordingly. Please, all those in favor? And that is carried. Chair's update this morning. Not a lot to update, really. Things have been progressing along here at the NPCA. I've had various discussions with Chandra over the last month as the NPCA itself has been going through all of the neat challenges of making a move and MOUs and all these other types of things. So I think things are progressing along very well. And anyway, and I want to thank everyone. This will be the last meeting that I'm chairing as the chair. So let's see how this goes this morning. Correspondence. There is one item of correspondence this morning, and it's from Niagara Region dated February 23rd, concerning a statutory public meeting for regional official plan amendment proposed law quarry expansion in the township of Wainfleet. So that's the only item. So can I get Member Taddison to move that we receive this correspondence? And
Yes.
And Member O'Neill, would you please second that?
So seconded.
Okay, are there any questions to this correspondence? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. We're going to move into presentation this morning, and it's concerning the NPCA Planning and Permitting Policies Amendments and Transition Plan to conform to Conservation Authorities Act and new Ontario regulations. And with that, I am going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the board. Before you today are several reports related to changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and new regulations that will be coming into effect as of April 1st, 2024. This is a presentation just to give a brief overview of the changes that will be coming into effect and the NPCA's plans for transitioning to ensure conformity with those legislative and regulatory changes. So I'll just be providing a brief background of sort of how we got here today, summary of the key changes, and our transition plan that is before you today. So as you know, over several years, there have been changes to the Conservation Authorities Act through several bills and enactments and proclamations and regulations that have come forward, starting in 2017. And these regulatory changes really have been focusing on the mandate of the conservation authorities, governance changes, changes to our budgeting process, and the piece that we've been anticipating and waiting for have been proclamation of changes to Section 28, which is our permitting section of the Conservation Authorities Act. Late in 2022, there was also a proposal by the province to look at updates to the regulation of development for the protection of people and property from natural hazards in Ontario, and those were posted on the ERO for consultation. The NPCA and our Conservation Authority partners across the province did provide comments on all of this legislation, either individually or collectively through Conservation Ontario. So just a few weeks ago, on February 16th, we did receive notice from the ministry that the following will come into force as of April 1st. So there's proclamations of provisions in the Conservation Authorities Act related to work permits and compliance and enforcement. There's Ontario Regulation 68821, Rules of Conduct in Conservation Areas. So this is one regulation for all conservation authorities where there were individual regulations before. Ontario Regulation 4124, Prohibited Activities, Exemptions, and Permits. Again, this is one regulation for all conservation authorities, replacing the individual regulations. However, 4124 does recognize individual conservation authority storm events and other requirements. And then there are further amendments to Ontario Regulation 68621, which is our mandatory programs and services, and that's related to reporting requirements now on our permit activities and compliance. So knowing that these changes have been coming and were forthcoming starting in 2018, The NPCA has been developing and updating our policies, procedural guidance, customer service standards, and our regulatory mapping to improve service delivery and in response and anticipation of these legislative changes. So just some of the key changes that are coming forward. The report before you, FAO 924, goes into more detail on these changes. There's quite a lot in there, so hopefully I'm hitting the highlights. So in terms of defining our regulated areas, there are changes to the definition of watercourse. So a defined channel having bed and banks or sides in which a flow of water regularly or continuously occurs. Before it was an identifiable depression. So there is some refinements there. The regulated area adjacent to wetlands is now 30 meters for all wetlands, where before it was 120 from provincially significant wetlands and wetlands greater than 2 hectares, and only 30 meters from wetlands less than 2 hectares in size. Hazard allowances have been standardized across the Conservation Authority's jurisdictions. Hazard allowances are areas adjacent to natural hazards such as flooding and erosion, top of bank, where it allows the Conservation Authority to look at the dynamic nature of these hazards. So that has been set at 15 meters. However, for the NPCA, we did have an exception in our old regulation that has carried over, where there is no hazard allowance identified adjacent to non-apparent valley system. So where there isn't an apparent valley, there is no hazard allowance to floodplain or meander belt. For the Great Lakes St. Lawrence River system, there is an addition of 30-meter allowance inland from dynamic beaches and an additional 15-meter inland allowance from the furthest extent of the shoreline regulated areas. And that is consistent with some of the technical guidance and discussion that has been coming through the province. For regulation mapping, there is a requirement for annual review of mapping to determine updates, and we do this regularly. We take a look at if there have been changes to the delineation of features within our regulated areas as a result of development, if there's new information coming in from the province in terms of provincially significant wetland data. We do that update on a regular basis, and we have initiated a work plan to start looking at wetlands and other components of our mapping, such as water courses, and then further long-term looking at the other components of our reg mapping. So where significant updates are made, we must provide notice to the public and municipalities and stakeholders at least 30 days prior to the authority meeting to consider those changes. So for example, our floodplain mapping updates, we would now need to post 30 days before the authority meeting to consider those changes and update our mapping. New to the regulation are exemptions for low-risk activities. And these were proposed in that proposal in late 2022. Most of them were identified at the time. There are a couple additional ones that have made it into the list. These are mainly minor in nature. There are size and location thresholds also associated with these exemptions. So the regulation does need to be read to determine exactly in what circumstances these exemptions will be permitted. So generally, we're looking at accessory structures. We have seasonal floating docks now, non-habitable accessory structures. We have agricultural and field erosion control structures, unenclosed detached decks or patios, installation and maintenance of tile drains, installation maintenance of offline ponds, maintenance and repair of municipal drains, and this is one that was new to this list for us, and Conservation Ontario is working actively with our municipal partners to determine if there's any revisions to our existing DART protocol, and in what instances would those exemptions be, and how do we continue to work with our municipal partners to ensure that there is mitigation put in place during those works. And also maintenance and repair to private driveways or laneways or private roads and driveways. And again, we're seeking some further clarification from the province on exactly what those exemptions would look like. So we are encouraging landowners to reach out to the NPCA just to confirm whether or not what they are proposing falls under these low-risk activities and could be exempt from receiving permits. For the permit applications themselves, there is a requirement for a pre-submission consultation. If it is requested by an applicant, it is required. There is a requirement for complete applications. We must notify an applicant in writing within 21 days of receiving their application whether or not we deem their application complete. Applicants can request administrative reviews if they feel there is a request for information that they feel is not necessary, or if they feel, or if the 21 days has elapsed and they wish to have that administrative review completed. So within your package today, there is a report, FA 1224, that does request delegation of authority to the CAO and the Director of Planning and Development to oversee these administrative reviews of applications and complete submissions. For our permits themselves, there are changes to what we have known as the 5 tests of a permit. Pollution and conservation of land have been removed. We were anticipating that as a result of what was proposed back in 2022. And what has been added are the tests of unstable soil or bedrock, and that's related to the natural hazards, erosion components, health or safety of persons, and damage or destruction, again related to natural hazards. The control of flooding, erosion, and dynamic beaches remains within the tests. There are additional powers for the minister to issue permits or to instruct conservation authorities not to issue certain types of permits. The applicant now has additional procedural rights for appeals, either going to the board for a hearing, directly to the minister for review, or appealing to the Ontario Land Tribunal. It now allows for the exemption of development from obtaining a permit where development has been authorized under the Planning Act. There is no regulation yet to implement this provision, so that's something that we have not seen yet. In your package today, there is a report, again, FA 12, seeking the redelegation of signatory authority for permits. So currently, the CAO and myself have signatory approval for all permits. Our Senior Manager of Environmental Planning and Policy and our Manager of Planning and Permitting have the authority for routine and minor permits. So we're seeking that continuation of authority. There is a new section to the Conservation Authorities Act, Part 7, that speaks to enforcement and offenses. And related to this, FA 1312, that report is requesting the reappointment of our officers. So these are regulation officers for our permits under Section 28, but also for officers for enforcing the regulation for conduct on our own Conservation Authority lands. There is some more tools in the toolbox, so to speak, for compliance and enforcement, which is great. We do have the ability to issue stop orders under particular circumstances. There are also increases to maximum penalties and offenses for individuals and corporations. And again, we were anticipating these changes, and we're happy to see that they made them through into the final provisions and regulations. On reporting and policies, there is a requirement for all conservation authorities to have policy and procedure documents for permit applications where reviews are required. And most of you were involved in our policy update that we completed at the end of 2022 to really bring our policy document up to speed and to compliance as much as possible at that time with provincial legislation and our procedural document recognizing best practices for the review of applications. And as I noted, annually, we are required to report on statistics on permits and our compliance with the regulation. And there's 2 information reports before you today. We have been reporting regularly, I think since about 2020, 2021, on our planning and compliance statistics. So we'll continue to do that and work with Conservation Ontario on any consistency that we need to bring into our annual reporting with our other conservation authorities. For the conservation areas regulation, the conduct on our conservation areas, as I noted, it replaces the individual regulations, and we are recommending reappointment of our conservation area staff as officers under Part 7 of our Conservation Authorities Act. And just to sort of wrap up, to give you a sense of our transition plan, we are aiming by April 1st to get in immediate administrative and housekeeping changes in effect, so we can post them on the website so it's clear to applicants and our partners moving forward that we are looking at the new provisions and the new regulation. So before you today are the delegation of authority for the permits and the administrative review, reappointment of officers. We're updating our permit forms, templates, pre-submission checklists, and we have before you in Report 0924 description of the housekeeping amendments that we will be making to our policy document. These are very specific and surgical in terms of amendments that are looking at replacement of references to the new regulation, changes of definitions, the exemptions that are put forward within the new regulation. Moving into the summer, we will be looking to update our compliance and enforcement procedural manual and standard operating procedures, updating our client service standards. We are working with Conservation Ontario. They are providing some more guidelines to Conservation Authority staff for that. And developing the permit administrative review policies and procedure. And again, Conservation Authority is providing some guidance there. Some of our longer term actions that are going to require a bit more time and resources. We will need to revisit the board hearing procedures and the administrative bylaw. And again, Conservation Ontario is providing guidance on that like they have in the past. Updating our planning and procedural permitting manual. And again, this will be updated to reflect any further technical guidance that may come from the province, best practices as we move forward, and identifying how best to implement the new tests of our permit. Our regulation mapping, as I noted, is ongoing. And then we intend to bring forward a work plan by the end of the year on more of a comprehensive review of our policy document as a result of further guidance and technical guidance that may be coming from the province and Conservation Ontario, and what we learn over the next few months in terms of implementing these changes, and if any further changes will be required. During this time, we have reached out to our municipal partners to inform them of the changes and our reports that are before you today. We are meeting with municipal staff to discuss the changes and do some training. And we're also working through our public advisory committee to identify how we can work with their respective industries and community groups to reach out, provide this information, and do some training or presentations with them. So with that, I thank you for your time, and myself and my staff are available for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Leilani. What an amazing amount of work you and your staff have done over the last 2 years to get us to the situation or I say the positive place that we're at. And before I open it to other questions, out of all of this, is there anything that's sort of keeping you up at night of concern, or are we in a good place as far as setting policy procedures and the like? Because like going through your list, I know we're either the same as the rest of the province or we're ahead of the game in many areas. So just a question on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're in a very good position to pivot, and we have been. My staff have been working already on the red line revisions required for the housekeeping amendments and preparing those administrative changes to our forms and checklists. Some of our Conservation Authority partners out there, they haven't updated or touched their policies in several years, and so they are quite outdated, and there will be some extensive work on their end to bring their policies up to date as it is. Some of them have adopted the Conservation Ontario transition guidelines, some of which we have put within our transition plan. And we are working so that we are consistent across the board and bringing things together. So I think we're in a good position. We may be a little advanced from some other conservation authorities in some areas. Areas where we will need a bit more time and resources is our regulation mapping updates to have full comprehensive update, and that is similar with our other conservation authority partners out there. I think if anything keeps me up at night, it'll just be the implementation and see how it rolls out. Because there are, as I noted, there's new abilities for applicants that they can take advantage of in terms of how they wish their permit applications to move forward, that will need to respond to new administrative timelines. So it'll just be rolling it out and ensuring that we're hitting those timelines and able to track as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the director from the board at this point? Member Beatty.
Just one of curiosity. You have now gone through the changes coming from the ministry. We expect the rollout, the changes implemented. Things will start to work according to the new criteria. Do you get the feeling that Toronto is just going to keep changing and rolling things out? Or is this change going to stop and give us an opportunity to actually focus on what we're supposed to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm hoping this signals a moment of stability. We have been waiting for these proclamations and this regulation to come out for quite some time. And now that it is out and we're able to put it in place, I'm hoping we are given the moment to kind of breathe with this and put it into place and actually see how it will be implemented and how it will roll out, and for us to track what changes are occurring in the process. And as I noted, whether or not we need to revisit our policies to ensure that we are implementing it as intended, and moving forward. So I'm hoping it's a time of stability with our act and regulation.
So you think that'll be this year?
Yes, I'm hoping over the next year we'll be able to put everything in place. But there'll be some additional stuff, like I noted on the technical side. We'll need a bit more time on the mapping, but we are working to make sure we put everything and have it in place for this year.
Okay, thank you, Member Beatty. Member Taddison.
Hi, Leilani. Thanks for that presentation. Through the chair, just do you have any comments on the environmental implications of going from what we used to consider a depression now to a defined channel in terms of watercourses?
Thank you. Very good question, and something we have been talking about internally and with the other conservation authorities through Conservation Ontario. There is a process, best management process that we currently use across the conservation authorities, the Headwater Drainage Features Assessment. So there is a level of desktop exercise to identify watercourses, but there's definitely a need to be on site to take a look at watercourses and assess them to see whether or not they do have the characteristics of a watercourse that should be retained in situ, or if they are the type of watercourse that could be replicated in terms of function. So we do intend to continue to use that best practice and that guideline. And in terms of that environmental impact that you're requesting, for many of these changes, we're just going to have to see how they are implemented and really record and take note moving forward on what those types of changes mean to permits and what we're able to regulate on the ground. So at this time, I can't speculate, but we do have practices in place that we do intend to continue to use, so that we can ensure we are implementing the policies and doing our role as the regulatory authority.
Would it possibly shrink the watershed area?
I think the intention of that change to the definition is to sort of exempt or eliminate those very ephemeral, low-functioning headwater drainage features. In my opinion, I think that's why it was in there. I don't know if it would shrink fully the area that we regulate, because Again, it's a combination of a mapping exercise plus an on-site assessment. So I don't think it would be an easy sort of analysis to run.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Member Taddison. Seeing no other questions coming forward, thank you very much, Director, for the presentation this morning. Can I get Member Cridland to move and Member Beattie to second that we receive this presentation?
Yes.
Any questions to that motion? If not, all those in favor, please. And that is carried. There's no delegations this morning, so we're going to move to consent items. There's 4 consent items on the agenda this morning. Can I get Member Metcalf to move that we accept the 4 consent items, and can I get Member Seaborn to second that, please?
You can, thank you.
Okay, are there any questions or to any of these consent items this morning? I'm seeing none. Please vote either all in favor or, yeah, all in favor, I guess. Kind of still used to the electronic that we do at the region, too. Anyway, thank you. Let's move into our discussion items. 9.1. It's report FA 1524, single source procurement for Balls Falls Thanksgiving Festival. Member Christie, do you wish to make any comments to this?
Thank you, Chair. I will ask my it's okay. I'd ask my colleague Alicia Powell if she wants to come up and just say a little bit about the festival and why we're doing this.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Chair. Through you, as you saw in our previous item in consent, the NPCA and our teams have been steadily organizing and planning for the 50th anniversary of the Balls Falls Thanksgiving Festival with a handful of elevated enhancements to bring to our community this season. We're really excited to be organizing and planning for an extended and elevated evening of musical entertainment on the Saturday night at the Balls Falls Thanksgiving Festival. In order to do so, in consulting our procurement policies and looking at the retention of an elevated artist or, well-renowned Canadian performer, we do not fall within those policies and are able to single source the services or retention of a source of art or entertainer. And so we're seeking support from the board today to go forward with the sole source procurement of TNR Productions for the entire production of the festival over the 4 days, including the hiring and management of an elevated performing act. TNR Productions is well-renowned across Canada, particularly within Ontario and especially here in Niagara, being a lead provider of turnkey solutions for a number of different events and programs across the region, including, not to mention, Canal Days in Port Colborne. We've also received a number of letters of recommendation for the service provider and put that towards the board for your approval today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Member Houston to move that we accept or that we do the recommendations from this report. And Member O'Neill, could you second that, please?
So second. Oh,
Great. Yep. Thank you. Any questions or comments to the report or to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Second report this morning is the NPCA Planning and Permitting Policies, Amendments and Transition Plan to conform to Conservation Authorities Act and new regulations. Member Taddison, can I get you to move that we follow the recommendations of this report?
So moved.
And Member Cridland, could you second that, please? I think so. Yeah, she nodded. Okay, good.
Yes, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, yes.
Director, any comments on this or no? No. Any questions from any members of the board at this point? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Next report is Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority reappointment of officers. Can I get Member Seaborn to move that we accept the recommendations of this report?
So moved.
And Member Beattie, would you second that, please? Are there any questions to this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. And our final discussion item for this morning is report number FA 1224, Delegation of Authority under the Conservation Authorities Act. Can I get Member Metcalf to move that we accept these recommendations? And Member Hewson, would you second that, please? Yep. Thank you. Yep, thank you. Any questions or any comments to this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. We have the Governance Committee minutes coming out under our committee report section. And so, Member Seaborn, can I get you to move that we receive these minutes?
Yes, you can. So moved.
And Member Metcalf, would you second that, please? Thank you. Any questions to the Governance Committee minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Public Advisory Committee minutes dated February the 27th. Can I get Member Taddison to move that we receive these minutes?
So moved.
And Member Hewson, could you second that, please?
Moved.
Thank you. Any questions to the minutes from the Public Advisory Committee? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Finally, the Source Protection Authority Committee minutes dated October the 20th, 2023. Can I get Member O'Neill to move that we receive those minutes?
So moved.
And Member Cridlin, could you second that, please?
Moved.
Thank you. Any question to these minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Under motions this morning, we do have to do a motion concerning the appointment of the auditors, and that's coming forward. This needs to be done due to the delay of the annual general meeting. We just want to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed when it comes to making sure that the auditors, who are actually already working on the audit, if I'm not mistaken, and we have this all in place. So with that, appointment of the auditors, Member Beattie, can I get you to move that? Member Metcalf, can I get you to second that? And it's be it resolved that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority appoints KPMG LLP as its auditors for the 2024 fiscal year. Are there any questions to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Are there any notices of motion this morning? Seeing none. New business. The first thing under new business is the Conservation Foundation. Member Hewson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. There isn't a huge update. Just to share with the committee that we have had some community engagement in terms of a presentation given to the Jordan Lions Club, as well as a meeting at Balls Falls with Buy-in Stock Natural Playgrounds, and there could be a potential partnership there. The Hamilton Chamber of Commerce had some new member networking opportunities, and there's quite a few activities planned for the Earth Day promotions, including an event at the Exchange Brewery on April 12th to the 14th, where there are some proceeds that will come to the foundation. So we're excited about that. There is a Rotary Club of Fonthill Pelham tree planting initiative on April the 20th. And there's a rally at Peace Park in Pelham on Saturday, April 20th, as well as a Hits FM Scrap Metal Drive on April the 22nd. So we're just continuing on with building our resources to support the campaign and always looking for our potential partners and donors, especially corporate donors. And I continue to invite the board, if they have are aware of a potential corporate donor, please connect them with us, because we're definitely working towards building the campaign and support through the foundation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Foundation Chair Hewson. Any questions to Diana at this point? Okay, thank you very much, Member Hewson. Is there any other new business that anyone wishes to bring up this morning? And I hear or see none.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane. Yep.
I just want to add, I realize you acknowledged this was your last meeting as the chair, and I just wanted to thank you on behalf of our committee. I hope they don't mind me doing that for your work in terms of keeping on track of our meetings and representing the board with your leadership, Chair. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Hewson. You're going to get to hear from me, though, at the AGM, so that's a positive thing, too. Our next item is a closed session that we have to deal with. So with that, and it's concerning personal matters about an identifiable individual, including NPCA employees, and this is regarding the Chief Administrative Officer performance evaluation. So, can I get Member Metcalf to move that we go into closed session? Member Beattie, can you second that, please? All those in favor? Thank you. So just for the sake of those that are watching the streaming this morning, this is going to be the end of the streaming because we will have no, we won't have anything of concern coming out of the closed session. And with that, for those of you that are at home, please make sure that you're in such a position that that you don't have anybody else looking at what you're doing. So with that, thank you very much. And we'll take about 2 minutes to